All right, so we should be live. I'm just going to verify it on the Moundville Archaeological Park's Facebook page because I want to make sure it is working. If anyone is joining us this morning, feel free to leave us any comments in the comment section. If you have any questions about birds or birds that are found at Moundville, we've got some people here who can answer your questions. So let me just refresh here and just make sure that everything is okay. We should be live. Yep, so it looks like we're live. And we are ready to go. So I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome to today's Museums from Your Home live stream presented by the University of Alabama Museums. My name is Rebecca Johnson and I am the communication specialist for UA Museums. And joining me for a discussion about Moundville and the birds that are found there are Director of Moundville Archaeological Park, Dr. Alex Benitez, and Moundville Archaeological Park's Education Outreach Coordinator, Lindsay Gordon. And Lindsay, I see we have a guest today. So would you like to introduce him?
Yeah. Hi, guys. Happy Moundville Monday. We have Mr. Dwight Lammon. He is one of our wonderful museum docents. And one thing that you guys should know is that Moundville Park is a part of the West Alabama Birding Trail. He is our local birding expert. He is also a retired nurse from DCH. So shout out to all those nurses working out there right now during the coronavirus. And he's taught birding to the OLLI classes for 4 years. And he also has a degree in biology from UA. So thank you for doing this with us, Mr. Dwight. And thank you to all of our docents too.
Glad to do it.
Well, before we get into our bird talk, just as a reminder, you can leave us comments in the comment section if you have any questions. And as another reminder, this is all live, so just hang in with us if there are any connection issues or if Facebook is having issues. I know last night we had some bad weather around these parts, and there might be some internet connectivity stuff going on, but we'll hopefully get through this with no problems. But since it is live, sometimes those things do happen, so just be patient and hang in there with us. So now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, Dwight, I actually have some questions because I know the Office of Archaeological Research down at Moundville spotted some owlets recently, some baby owls. So did you happen to get a chance to look at those owls? And do you have any thoughts on what kind of owlets they might be?
I saw the pictures, and I think they're great horned owlets. They have a facial mask like a great horn.
Let's see, I'll bring those up. So people
there he
can
is.
See. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me pull this back up. This is that live component that we're talking about.
The owls and the hawks, predators, nest earlier than most birds. So that's why we already have owlets on the ground in April. And it's neat that this is on the Moundville property. The mask right there looks like a great horned owl rather than a barred owl. And he has some yellow eyes, which he's probably a great horned owl.
Yeah, they spotted one, and then they went back a day or so later, and then they found another one. So in this picture here that we're showing, there's, if you can see, there's one of them nestled up against the tree there. So they found they found two of them, and they look pretty big for little baby owls.
The adults are probably nearby watching them because they're not able to fend for themselves yet. They're just learning.
Yeah, there any way, Dwight, is there a rough estimate on maybe how old they might be?
I don't know. It would be, your guess would be as good as mine. I'm not an expert on the owl size, but I would guess they probably fledged out of the nest just a day or two before these pictures were taken.
Yeah, they unfortunately, I think they left OAR, but they spent a little while there at OAR, so that was kind of an exciting development that came out of the Office of Archaeological Research that they had spotted some owlets there.
Well, I missed them.
They're very cute, but I think they wanted to, OAR wanted to make sure that they were taken care of and that they were okay. So I guess they're okay with their parents now. They've gone somewhere else.
Yeah, and I would like to say that if you do find baby birds out of the nest, the best thing to do is leave them alone because nature is probably happening the way it's supposed to, and the parents are taking care of the baby. The parents will come by and feed the birds after they come out of the nest. So it's best not to pick one up and take it away. Just leave it alone.
I would also add that, we do get a lot of other wildlife here in the park, and that's something we ask our visitors as well. I mean, it's just fascinating to see, that really we are just an important stopping point for a lot of migratory birds, but also a lot of wildlife making its way from, local waterways to the river and vice versa. And so we do see a lot of diverse wildlife here in the park, and it's one reason to come out. You never know what you'll see, and some of them come back regularly. We've named them, so we have Hank Heron, the heron out at the pond who's been there for several years, and a few egrets. So
yes, Moundville is one of the best places to watch birds in West Alabama. It's a wonderful place.
Hank Heron, I love it. That's so great. What a great name. So, Dwight, did you want to guide us through some of those birds that you can find at Moundville?
Sure. I'll start the presentation with the title page of a cardinal.
All right, hang on a second. Be patient with me. Okay, let's see. There we go.
There he is.
Hey.
The cardinal, everybody knows. He's the state bird of 7 states, and just one of the most beautiful birds. And he comes to the feeder. He sings all year long. So he's just a beautiful bird and a beautiful singer. And many children have been able to watch him in a nest because he likes to nest about head high and close to a house sometimes. So we'll go to the next bird now. Moundville has 5 habitats here, and that's why it's such a good place to watch birds. It has the fields, obviously, so the field birds are there. It has the woods, and we have nice trails through the woods, and the edge, and which is the edge of the field and the woods, and then river birds. Moundville overlooks the Black Warrior River, and then swamp and lake. So we'll talk about the birds in each one of these habitats. So we'll go to the next slide now, and we'll do the field birds. And this is a picture of Moundville, and to give you a perspective of how big it is, the white dot on the road is a person walking, if you can see that. So it's 300 acres, and it's wonderful to attract field birds. And we'll talk about the field birds first. This is a dickcissel. Not many people have seen a dickcissel, but he's named after his song, which ends in dickcissel. So that's how he got his name. He's a sparrow-like bird, but unlike sparrows, he has the beautiful color of yellow. Okay. And this is a Mississippi kite. All gray except for red eyes and a little bit of light gray on the wings, dark gray on the tail and tips of the wings. This bird is beautiful to watch because he soars back and forth over the fields and eats large insects. And unlike a lot of predators, he eats the insects on the fly. So he catches them with his claws, his talons, and then eats them while he's flying. He reaches down to his claws or brings his claws up to his beak and eats the bird and then continues to hunt. So they don't land while they're eating. They just keep flying. Okay, the next one. This is a barn swallow. He has a forked tail, and that separates him from other swallows. This is one of the most widespread birds in the world. He's in both the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere. And he nests on close to humans. He nests on front porches sometimes. He has a mud nest, and he nests under the patio at the Moundville Museum. Okay. This is the Eastern meadowlark. He is the state bird for 6 well, he and his cousin, the western meadowlark on the other side of the Rockies and in the Great Plains, are the state bird for 6 states. Beautiful black and yellow, but also his song. It sounds like spring of the year. And my wife is playing it now. Spring of the year. This is the robin. This is Roger Tory Peterson said, this is the bird that everybody knows. And that's the way he described it in his first bird guide. Robin Redbreast, we grow up reading children's books with Robin Redbreast. So everybody knows this bird. He practices social distancing. When you see him in a field, unlike many flocks of birds, you can see 100 robins in the field, and they're all at least 6 feet apart as they hunt for worms. So that sets him apart from almost every other bird. Okay. This is a barn owl, all white. The female may have some brown on the chest, but the male is all white like this. It's a beautiful face, one of the prettiest faces you'll see on a bird, with the dark eyes and the pure white face with a heart shape around. These owls hunt exclusively at night, unlike most owls, which will also hunt in the dusk and the dawn. This bird will not get off the perch until about an hour after sundown. And he doesn't hoot like most owls. He screams. Okay. This is an eastern kingbird, and everybody has seen an eastern kingbird, whether you know it or not, just by riding in a car along a country road, because he likes to perch on the fences that separate the road from the field, and on the power line too. So he has a dark upper side and a light underside with the white on the tip of the black tail. And he is a flycatcher. So he sally forth from his perch and catches a bug and then brings it back to the perch and eats it. Okay. Now the wood birds, of all the habitats, I've selected more birds in the woods than any of the other ones. I have 39 species total in this presentation. So now we'll do the first wood bird. This is the barred owl. He likes to hunt in the woods, like the barn owl, which we just did, likes to hunt in the fields. The barred owl has dark eyes, and he's called barred because of his horizontal bars on his upper chest, and then his vertical bars on his lower chest and his belly. And he's the most common owl that we have in the eastern United States. And he makes a sound like, who cooks for y'all? And it sounds like, and I'm sure most people that live in the South, close to any woods, have heard that sound at night. I heard it last night. Okay, next one. This is the great crested flycatcher. One of our largest flycatchers with 4 beautiful colors. Most flycatchers only have 2, but this bird has the rust under his wing and under his tail. He has the yellow on his breast and his belly. He has the gray. Did I miss one? Dark gray and light gray. And he makes a whip sound, among other sounds. And I would like to credit Mr. Charles Grisham for many of these pictures. And there are other photos in here that other people took. Charles is a lawyer in Huntsville that is probably the best bird photographer in the state of Alabama. And he posts on Birding Alabama, a Facebook page. You can go to the next slide now. This is one of my favorite birds, the summer tanager. This is the male. He is red, and the female is a greenish yellow. He arrived about a week ago. and he will be here all summer. And his call, which my wife is going to play, picky ticky top. That's it. That's one of the most common sounds in the southern woods in the summer. Okay. The scarlet tanager just arrived at my house this morning before I started this. I looked out at my suet feeder, and there was a male scarlet tanager that looked just like this. So he probably flew in last night. They migrate down to South America. The male looks like this, and the female, just like the summer tanager, is yellow with darker wings. So where this one's red, the female is yellow. Okay. This is a warbler, and I have several warblers listed here in the wood. They're called wood warblers because they live in the woods. This is the black and white warbler. And most warblers forage out in the leaves, in the little twigs. This one is different. He forages on the trunk and the large limbs like a nuthatch. So it's appropriate that this picture has him on a limb. So he picks the bugs out of the bark. He is a warbler because he's a small bird with a small pointed beak. We have 52 warblers in the United States, and 18 of those nest in the Southeast, and he is one of those. Okay. This warbler is called a Kentucky warbler with a distinctive yellow-black markings on his face. He makes a sound very much like a Carolina wren. It's almost impossible to tell the difference in their calls. So he's seldom seen, and if we hear them, we can't tell if we're hearing him or a Carolina wren. So I've only seen maybe one or two every year. Okay. This is the northern parula. He is heard much more than he's seen, and he's been heard. This is him right there. He has a trill that is ascending in pitch so that it sounds like a coffee cup being filled up, and then the last note drops. So it's filled up and then it spills over. I've heard him every day for 2 weeks at my house. He arrived about 2 weeks ago. I haven't seen him yet. I'll be fortunate to actually see him this year, but I hear him every day. Okay. This is the yellow warbler, one of the most widespread warblers in the United States. He's both east and west, down in Mexico, all over Canada. Not as common in this part of Alabama, but he is still here. This is the male with the beautiful red stripes over the yellow body. Now, he looks a lot like the prothonotary warbler, which I don't have a picture of today. But the prothonotary does not have the red stripes. And the prothonotary lives around the swamps, and this one lives high in the trees. Okay. This is a warbler, and might be our last warbler, I think. This is the common yellowthroat. And the male has the dark black mask with the beautiful yellow under that. And he makes a sound called witchity, 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 and Carol's going to play that. It's kind of a slow sound compared to most. Witchity, witchity, witchity. Okay, next slide. Oh, this is a warbler too. That was not my last one. This is the hooded warbler, and he is around my house and on Moundville, I'm sure. And like most warblers, he's heard more than seen. And his sound is weeda weeda weedio, weeda weeda weedio. Okay, now this one is a Chuck Will's widow, and everybody has heard them if they live in the east, and they actually sleep in the east because he sings at night. And it sounds like chuck down widow, chuck down widow. And it sounds, the actual whistle is this is a picture that I actually took. It's the first Chuck Will's widow I'd ever seen. Most birders go through their whole life and only hear the Chuck Will's widow and the whippoorwill. They seldom get to see one, but my neighbor called me and said, I have a Chuck Will's widow nesting in my yard. She has a lot of woods in her yard. So I went over there and took this picture, and then the next slide actually shows this bird on the nest. He nests on the ground. She nests on the ground, and she's actually on top of the eggs now in a poison ivy patch. The way to tell the difference in the Chuck Will's widow and the whippoorwill is the speed of the song. The whippoorwill has a song that he makes every second. Whereas this one is slower. So the pace of the song is how you tell what you're listening to. But I feel fortunate that in my lifetime, I actually got to see one. Okay, next. This is our state bird called the yellowhammer, but the formal name is northern flicker. This is the yellow-shafted northern flicker, and probably one of the most beautifully colored birds that we have. The yellow is underneath the tail and under the wings. And his cousin out west is the red-shafted northern flicker, and he has red where this one has yellow. Okay. This is the much more common red-bellied woodpecker. He's everywhere. He and the downy are the most numerous woodpeckers in the east. This is a female because the red stops on top of her head before it gets to the bill. But the male has red that goes all the way to the bill. Okay. This is the yellow-throated vireo. Vireos, most of them have a spectacle on their face, and you can see the yellow that starts at his bill and goes around his eye and then ends almost as if he has glasses on. So we call those spectacles. I have heard and seen him at Moundville several times, and he arrived early this year. So he got to my house here in Coker, Alabama, about 3 weeks ago. Okay. This is the red-eyed vireo. And he sings all day long. Unlike most birds, which take the midday off, he will still be singing. He sings high up in a tree. He does have a red eye. He does not have spectacles like many vireos, but he has that distinctive white eyebrow and a black eye line. Okay. This is the white-eyed vireo, and you can see his spectacle, kind of half of a spectacle coming around there. He does have a white eye, but only the adults have the white eye that you can see in this picture. The immatures don't have that. He makes one of the most unique sounds of all the birds. She's playing it now. And we say, quick with the beer check is what it sounds like. But he is loud, not melodious, not harmonious, just loud, like a little wren. He's just in your face. He stays in the thick cover. Okay. Now the edge birds, and the edge again means birds that like a little bit of trees, but not thick trees in the forest, and they like a little bit of field, but they're not exclusively in the field. So and when I get to these birds, you'll understand where you see them is around the edges. Okay. The first one is the mockingbird, a long-tailed mimic that has 50 or 60 different birds that he mimics, and you know that it's him that you're hearing because he repeats each bird 3 or more times, whereas the other mimics, which is the brown thrasher and the gray catbird, don't do it 3 times most of the time. Sometimes the brown thrasher. Carol's playing it now. See how he repeats it 3 or more times before he switches to another one? Okay. Now the brown thrasher, which I don't have, only does it twice, with occasional 3 times. Okay. This is the orchard oriole. This is the male. The female is yellow, where he is black and orange. She's almost all yellow, but she does have white on her wings. I actually found a nest right outside the conference center 2 or 3 years ago, and we watched that orchard oriole raise the babies there. It was only 15 feet off the ground. Orioles have long, pointed bills. Now, the next slide is also an orchard oriole, but it looks nothing like the slide we just saw. There's no orange, and it can be confusing to birders, but this is an immature male. So most male birds are born looking like their mother, and then when they molt for the first time, they get the feathers of their father. This one is unique in that he gets the feathers of an immature male, which are not exactly his mother or his father. And he wears this for a year until he molts for the first time and gets the orange color. But he can sing. And I thought I had a new bird the first time I saw one of these over in Gadsden. I just knew I had a new bird because he was singing out in the open, and I looked at him and didn't know him, but he's an immature orchard oriole. Okay. This is a Baltimore oriole. Orioles build pendulous nests. So they like to get a fork of a tree and then let the nest hang be under the fork. And it may hang 3 to 4 inches with the orchard oriole. With the Baltimore oriole, it can go 5 or 6 inches. And they weave the grass and the other things together to have a pendulous nest. Okay. This is the phoebe, the eastern phoebe, and he wags his tail. He's a flycatcher, and his tail wag helps us identify him. And he sounds like Phoebe, Phoebe, and she's going to play. There he is. Okay, next bird. This is a mourning dove, a beautiful caramel color, smooth feathers with pink feet, blue eye ring, and black spots on the wings and a pointed tail. And he goes, now, the next slide is our invader dove. This is the Eurasian collared dove. He is not a harmful invader, though. The biologists have watched him over the years since he got here in the 90s, and he has invaded from Florida all the way up to Alaska, and he covers almost all the United States, but he skipped New England. I don't know why he doesn't like New England, but he does not influence the mourning dove population. It doesn't seem like he's hurt the normal fauna like many invaders do. So he's a little bit larger than the mourning dove. He has the black collar on the back of his neck. That's what he's named for. He does not have the black spots of the mourning dove, and he does not have a pointed tail, and his color is not caramel. It's pale gray. And you can see these all over suburbia, all over downtown Tuscaloosa, really. And his call is not like the mourning dove. It's a little faster, and he goes. Okay, next slide. This is a bluebird. Many people's favorite bird. This is the male with a little more blue than the female, a little more orange on the chest. Now this is a human success story because this bird, the early part of the last century, was losing population, but he came back because of bird boxes. So the more bluebird boxes we put out, the better. Okay, next. Now the river birds, and I've only got 2 river birds. One is the kingfisher. This is the male kingfisher. All the kingfishers are all over the world, many different species, and they all eat fish. They dive into the water and catch the fish in their beaks. And they have an unusual nesting habit in that they dig a long tunnel 3 to 7 feet deep on the bank of a river or a lake. It has to be a bank, and they nest at the end of that tunnel. And it's so big that they will allow other things to nest in the tunnel with them. This is one of the only birds where the female is more colorful than the male. So the next slide shows the female. She has an extra rusty band around her abdomen there. So she's more colorful than him. Okay. This is the great blue heron. This looks like a dinosaur, doesn't it? They nest in rookeries. I have been to a rookery already this spring. Their nest, they already have babies in the nest. There are at least 16 nests in this rookery that I went to. And is this the bird that you named Hank Heron?
Yes, he was named Hank. Yes, our good blue heron.
Everybody that fishes or goes anywhere near water in all the United States knows this bird. It's our most common heron and most widespread. Okay. Now the swamp or lake birds. We do have swamps and lakes at Moundville. They're called borrow pits. The Native Americans borrowed the dirt out of that pit to make their mounds. So next slide. The first swamp bird is the wood duck. So this is the female in the foreground with her white teardrop, and then the beautifully colored male. And everybody that's been around water has heard this sound. This is the female. That's her flying away. That's her alarm. I don't know if you could hear the male in there, but he has a very soft buzzed sound, and he was making a little sound too. She's kind of the leader when it comes to flying off. She alarms and he follows her, but she's also very much the leader in reproduction. Once insemination happens, it's all up to her. She finds the nest, she raises the babies, and they follow her. So, and that's the way it is with most ducks. Okay, next. This is the mallard, the male on the right. People will ask, well, how do you tell a female mallard because so many female ducks look the same? One thing is her orange bill has a dark saddle on top of it, and other species of ducks don't have that saddle. But the best way to tell female ducks is by what male they're around, because we can tell what the males are. So we usually name the females by who they're hanging around, but that'll get you in trouble sometime. Okay, this is the great egret in his breeding plumage, which includes a green on his lower, which is the space in front of the eye. Beautiful, graceful birds. They almost went extinct when before it became illegal in 1918 to collect feathers. And you can see why. They were killed for their feathers. And we don't do that since 1918, not legally. Okay. This is a picture that I took of a great egret with a frog in his beak. This was taken at Savannah. It's kind of hard to see the frog, but he's huge. You can see 1 foot down there. We watched this from the car and took several pictures, and he never got a good grip on the frog, and he kept trying to get a better grip. And one time the frog escaped and hopped off. So he may still be living in Savannah. Okay. This is a green heron, kind of secretive in the shallows and the bushes around the edges, unless you go down to the Gulf Coast. Not so secretive around the rocky shore of some of the Gulf Coast, but around the lakes here, he can be hard to see. But he's not hard to hear. He makes a loud scow sound. Is it turned? Okay. Scow. Okay, next slide. This is the yellow-crowned night heron. This picture was taken at Perry County Lake in close to Marion, Alabama. He's not as big as he looks in this picture. He's about 24 inches tall. His cousin, the black-crowned night heron, is also around the south and in Moundville. Okay. And I believe this is our last bird. This is the red-winged blackbird. He lives around water. He flocks. You might see flocks of 100 of these. He has the pointed beak like most blackbirds and orioles. And if you're lucky, you get to see the yellow on his chevron as well as the red. And he sounds conquering. There it is. Conquering. Okay. Like most birds, he has lots of other sounds, and that's why Carol has to scroll through all the other sounds to get the ones that I wanted. Now, I wanted to end it with preserving habitat. Of course, Moundville is preserved, but birds need more than just the habitat that they need, the habitat that they used to have. All of our birds are decreasing in number, almost all of our birds, and it's because of loss of habitat. So I want to encourage people to take care of your fields and your woods and your swamps and your edges, and don't tear them up. Don't tear them up. Leave them alone. And one practical way is if you have a big yard that you're mowing, and it's like a field, don't mow all of it. Cut off some of the corners and let that come up naturally with the weeds and the grass, and then eventually seedlings, and eventually birds and other animals. And it's a great education for children to watch that patch that Daddy stopped mowing. So that's one way to save habitat. I don't have anything against mowed yards. I'm just saying that we need to preserve habitats. And another way is leave your dead trees alone. If the dead tree is not going to fall on the house, then leave it alone and just watch it. And even after it falls, leave it, because that's a wonderful habitat. Okay, I'm open for questions.
Well, I've got my binoculars ready. So I'm wondering, like, you were telling us all this wonderful, great information about birds. Like, so how can I get started birding? What are some things that I can do?
You need two things to be a birder. You need a bird guide and you need binoculars, and you've already got your binoculars. The bird guide is traditionally in the form of a book, but now, and I have many of these books that I've collected over the last 40 years, but now I use my phone with the app there are many apps that have the whole bird guide on your phone, and you can carry it in your pocket, and it's a lot easier than carrying the guide out in the field. I have a guide in my truck at all times, and I have binoculars in my truck at all times, but I always, for the last 4 years, I've used my phone as my bird guide for 99% of the, I don't know if you can see that, probably not. No, okay. But I gave it a try. But the bird guide has the sounds and the pictures, many pictures. So that's what I would suggest. And then go outside. That's the other thing. You've got to go outside. And that's the beauty of the hobby of birding, is it gets you outside. And going outside is so therapeutic. When you fall in love with nature, you want to take care of nature.
Alex, I just wanted to also say that we have the iNaturalist app of the university does, or UA Museums has the iNaturalist app. So if there are birds that you're looking for, you can also put them in the iNaturalist app, I believe. And you'll get an answer on what those birds might be. So.
Yes.
Yeah, and we can remind folks that, we had a great presentation by John Friel, the director of the Natural History Museum, on how to use iNaturalist, so they can go back to that presentation and help do something interesting, but help us as well, just identify what we have in the park. Dwight, do you know if any of those apps can identify birds by sound by any chance?
I recently heard of one. One of my birding students told me that she had seen one. I have not tried one that will identify by sound. But they will identify by sight if you put a picture in. And many people, even if they're not birders, have discovered this in the last few years, that if you send a picture of anything into a certain place, they will identify it for you.
And I think that's what iNaturalist does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that's very useful. I feel like it's cheating sometimes because I want to research the bird and identify it through my research first. But that is certainly useful. Another thing about becoming a birder is if you can tag along with somebody that's more experienced, it's just like anything else in life. If you can get a mentor that knows where the good birding sites are and that can take you there and talk you through identifying the birds.
Yeah, John Friel of the Alabama Museum of Natural History says BirdNet can identify sounds.
Great.
So that might be a good tip. We did have some comments about several of the birds that you talked about, Dwight, in your presentation. So Joe says, barn swallows are so beautiful. Love watching them swoop. So is that
Yes.
a trait of how they fly?
Oh, yes. I used to work at the Poison Center at Shelton State on night shift. And in the mornings, I would watch the barn swallows swoop over the pond behind Shelton State. And they will skim the water to eat an insect off the top of the water.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier, too, that we have a lot of those out at, under the deck. They nest under the deck at the museum, and we will get dozens of them that will do that. It's really amazing to see, and so you can certainly catch them out here.
And the 39 birds that I showed are just a small percentage of the birds that you can see at Moundville. The most common nest of swallows under that museum patio is the northern rough-winged swallow. So that when I step out on the patio, I see the northern rough wings and I see the barn swallows, and I occasionally see a tree swallow out there. So the 39 there's probably 150 to 180 species that have been found at Moundville.
Yeah, and Dr. Bomar says that there are red-breasted blackbirds darting around the Jones Archaeological Museum.
Well, he probably meant red-winged blackbirds, but
okay.
Yes, they're beautiful to watch and listen to.
Let's see if we have it. And I'm curious, Dwight, just to ask my own question. So is there a good time of the year to see these birds? Do they only come out at certain points in the year?
Yes, this class is on summer birds. And when we say summer birds, these are birds that arrive in the spring right now. Most of those birds that I showed on the PowerPoint are already here. Some are not yet. I don't think the Kentucky warbler's here yet. But this is the month that the birds get here, and they will stay here until late July or August, when they will fly back south for the winter. Some will even wait until October to fly back to the south. So those are migratory birds, but many of the birds that I had in the PowerPoint are year round. They spend the winter right here. They nest here. For instance, the cardinal, he's here year round.
Are there any large birds that come out to Moundville, like hawks?
Oh, yes. I didn't even mention the hawks. The red-tailed and the red-shouldered and the broad-winged hawks are all at Moundville. Of course, the turkey vultures and the black vultures. And then the Mississippi kite goes along with that. I don't know if a peregrine falcon has ever been seen at Moundville, but I'll bet the little tiny American kestrel has. I don't know if I've seen it out there, but I'm sure it's been out there. So these are predator birds that are looking for mammals to eat.
And Connie asked a question, does anyone ever do a guided tour for birding at Moundville?
Sure, I have before a couple of times, and I'll be glad to do it again.
Can I use this? And I'm going to preempt you here, Lindsay, if I can, or maybe I'll send it to you. We also do a big event where we
we typically do a large event called Bird Fest. It usually happens in May. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen in these next couple of weeks. But we typically have it in May. It's usually the end of May. So if we're hoping that it still goes on, but if it does not, we will definitely have it again next year, and we will more than likely have some sort of birding tour at Moundville with Dwight. So.
And I give tours all the time with my class, my Ollie class. It's part of the class. I guess it's like a lab in biology. Our lab is going outside and looking and listening to the birds. And we do that every week at least, and sometimes twice a week. But I take my friends out and people in my class. We go out and bird all the time. Before the era that we're in now, where we have to keep social distances, we don't go out then. But there's been a lot of solitary birding in the last 4 weeks. So, but yeah, if anybody that's listening to this that's not in Ollie wants to bird at Moundville, they can contact me, Dwight Lammon, and I'll give you a free tour sometime out there.
Dwight, I will say, I think you converted me into. I live in the park and I hear them all the time, and now I'm more than curious to know what I'm hearing and not seeing. So,
do you have a life list, Alex?
A what?
A life list is a list of all the species of birds you've seen in your whole life. And it's great. It's a great motivator to add more to it. It keeps you traveling. Once you see all the ones in the east, you've got to go on the other side of the Rockies and see all the ones in the west. So a life list I love. I've been keeping one since 1980. And so you need to start a list for Moundville.
I've got to pay more attention to my surroundings. It's really incredible. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and speaking of which, Barbara says hello from Germany. So hello.
Hello.
So we have some international viewers. So that makes me want to ask Dwight if you've seen birds in any other countries that you have been interested in.
I have made 2 trips to Costa Rica. I have made a trip to Israel, and I've birded in England and other countries in Central America. I have yet to be to South America, which has the most birds of any continent, 3,000. The United States has little less than 700, and there's 3,000 in South America. Costa Rica has 900. So Costa Rica, a country the size of West Virginia, has more species of birds than all of North America.
Wow.
Yes, and that's one of my life goals, is to keep going to other places I've never been and to see birds I've never seen. I have been to Germany, Barbara, when I was in the military. I was not a birder at that time, though. I probably saw some interesting birds and didn't know it.
So, where does the name yellowhammer actually come from? If that's not the actual name of the bird.
Well, a northern flicker is a woodpecker, and a common name for woodpeckers are hammers because they hammer on the tree. So the fact that they have yellow under their wings, they were nicknamed yellowhammer. And Alabama people were called yellowhammers in the Civil War, Alabama soldiers, and it's our state bird. We are the only state with the northern flicker as our state bird. So none of the western states have the red-shafted flicker as their state bird. Only us.
I will add too that it's wonderful to see and hear from somebody who's so knowledgeable about the birds here that we see at the park. But folks in Moundville's past were also very aware of their surroundings and wildlife. And Dr. Bill Bomar made an interesting, very good comment at one of our previous presentations about how people saw themselves in relationship to their wildlife, including birds. And so we do see quite a few birds depicted in stone, textiles, ceramics here at Moundville as well. So they were very aware of the importance of these their birds, flora and fauna out here.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of neat to identify them, and maybe appreciate them a little more than we generally do.
Yes, and they use them in effigy in their pottery. So that's, in fact, we have the duck bowl, the most famous artifact in the museum, has a duck head on it. Some people think it's not a duck, but we call it the duck bowl.
Here, I can share. I don't know if I can share that screen with y'all, but
yeah, I'll see it once it pops up. But it's not called. Is it officially called the duck bowl, or is that just something we call it for short?
It's what it's been known as, I think, for as long as it's probably been known.
And as a docent at the museum, I would tell listeners, there it is, that if you come for nothing else, come to see this bowl. The symmetry is just beautiful. It's been called the most beautiful and most important artifact north of the Rio Grande. And I believe it.
Yeah, and we have another comment here from Kevin, who says, I'm in the beginning stages of restoring a wetland meadow on my property in North Alabama. What are some beneficial plant species to grow in a wet grassland for bird habitat? Do you have any recommendations?
Well, the cattail comes to mind. Of course, any of the lilies. I'm not an expert on this, but I know that the red-winged blackbirds love cattails. But I would let it natural. Well, I don't know if it will self-seed because I don't know what's around it, but I would be tempted to let it naturally grow up and just leave it alone and see what happens. But you would need to contact a better expert than me about what to plant to draw in the birds.
Yeah, well, and going back to the duck bowl, what were some of were there any common animals or birds that the pottery might have pulled from? Do we know if there were species related to it, or was it just sort of a generic
Well, there's another artifact that's about 20 feet from the duck bowl in the museum that has a vulture wrapped around it, and you can tell pretty much by the shape.
I think I have that.
Okay, that it's a vulture. This one, yeah, there's the vulture with his hooked beak. And you can see how the master craftsman put the tail on one side and the neck and the head on the other side for two handles, really. And this was 800 years ago without a kill. This was outside firing. I know we're getting off the subject of birds, but this is just an amazing artifact.
Yeah, it's amazing to see their creativity and how they were able to build that. Just like you said, using the handles. That's really cool.
And without a wheel, without a kill or a wheel. So this was done by hand without spinning it.
That is amazing. Well, we do have another question. Is there any type of bird seed that is better to put in my feeders for Alabama birds?
Well, that's a good question. And it's a question that a lot of my students at Ollie ask. I like black sunflower seed. That's my favorite and about the only thing that I use. But I use suet a lot, which has seeds stuck in it. And I don't make my own suet. It's kind of messy. It's very cheap in the store to buy a cake of suet. And I see the birds coming to the suet as much as I do to the seed feeders. But millet is good. And then, of course, the thistle for the finches in the wintertime.
All right, so we have about 4 minutes left. If anybody has any questions they want to ask Dwight, put them down in the comment section. Otherwise, Lindsay or Alex, do you guys have any last words about Moundville and the birding that's out there?
Can I just make one quick, sort of just so folks know, the Ollie program is the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute on campus, and it really is geared towards folks who aren't in degree programs, but just who want to learn certain topics. And it's really great. A lot of us teach, individual classes for Ollie under different sort of themes, but it's really a great program and a way to learn things like this that you may not get in a more sort of formal 15-week program. So I think it's great that Dwight does this. I'm interested, and I may show up in his Ollie class next time. It was in my last presentation.
Yeah, you don't have to be retired to join Ollie, but most people are retired that join it. It's very cheap, $50 a year. There's no homework, there's no test, and it's people who want to learn just for the joy of learning.
Yeah. And I will say a lot of our summer programs are going online, so you can still take Ollie courses, but they're transitioning to online for at least the first part of the summer, I believe.
Yes.
Well, Lindsay or Dwight, do you guys have any parting words that you want to leave us with?
Yeah. So thank you, Dwight, for doing this, because I've learned so much, and I think I'm converted too. So next time I'm out and about, I think I'm going to start looking around and listening. But just to remind everybody, hopefully this summer we'll be having some Saturdays in the park. So every Saturday there will be some demonstrations and things going on in the park. Also, another reminder is that our Native American Festival, we are gearing up for that. And yes, I know it's in October. It's going to be October 7th through the 10th, but we are still getting ready. So if you know of any teachers that need to make reservations or you want to mark it on your calendar, please do so. I had one last question for Mr. Dwight, and that is, you also said that if you are birding with other experts, are there any groups around that people can join, or Facebook groups or anything like that people can join to learn more information?
Yes, the Facebook group is Birding Alabama, but there are groups like that in every state. And there are other birding groups on Facebook besides Birding Alabama. The best group to join is the Alabama Audubon Society, which until last year was called the Birmingham Audubon Society. They are extremely organized. They're very large. They have scientists come in from outside the state to give speeches. They have great tours. And they also they even employ young ornithologists in certain scientific endeavors. So it's an excellent opportunity. You can join the Alabama Ornithological Society, which I'm a member of, and they have 2 3-day festivals in the spring and the fall where they all get together and bird.
All right. Well, I think we are out of time. We have hit 11 o'clock here. So I'll just wrap us on up. And thank you so much, Dwight, again, for coming and talking to us about all the birds down at Moundville. I know, like Lindsay, I'm wanting to see if I can capture any of these birds, or at least hear them while I'm out there. So that's definitely something to look out for. I
thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dwight.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this Museums from Your Home live stream. We'll be doing this every weekday, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. And each day will feature a different aspect of UA museums. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be going back over to the Gorgas House Museum and the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum for a talk about history. So if you want to do that, check back with us tomorrow. And if you are enjoying what we're doing here with Museums from Your Home and would like to support us, please consider becoming a member of UA Museums at give.ua.edu/museums. And for a full live stream schedule, and let me get my fancy banner here. So you can get a full live stream schedule and links to the Color Our Collections coloring book and Discovering Alabama's online educational resources, including their free episodes and teacher guides. And we also have some teacher or educational resources at the Alabama Museum of Natural History's website as well. And you can find links to all of that at museums.ua.edu/museums from your home. So you can see all the content that we're generating and all of our live streams and all of our special video series. Everything will be linked at that website. So that would be a good place to check it out. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who joined in the chat and left us comments and questions. And thank you for visiting UA Museums from Your Home. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye everybody.